I'm excited for this, man. We had a conversation with our guy, Will Redmond, general manager for Auburn. Phenomenal conversation. Great, just a great human being, dude. Great human being. You feel good about the future of Auburn football as long as he's running the show out there. But the conversation is brought to you, powered by Teamworks. GML Access is powered by Teamworks. Win the revenue sharing era with Teamworks General Manager. Purpose-built for collegiate athletics, trusted by 99% of D1 NCAA institutions. Teamworks is uniquely designed by those who understand the challenges of college athletics. Strategically allocate resources, optimize investments, evaluate your roster, and build championship-caliber teams all on one integrated platform. Check out teamworks.com/general-manager to learn more. So Auburn fans, make sure you're subscribed. Here's our conversation with Auburn GM Will Redmond. So, Will, a lot of your job, I have to believe, comes with logistics and roster construction and putting people in the right place. So I think you're the perfect person to ask this to. Are you taking 100 men or a gorilla if push came to shove there?
I'm going gorilla every time. I think
people
don't know what they don't know, and they don't really want to find out. I'm taking gorilla every time.
That sounds like you have some previous gorilla expertise.
I got in an argument with a guy I worked with at LSU on a similar topic. So oddly enough, and this was 3 years ago, we did a little bit of digging and some research. I don't feel great about man versus wild in that scenario, and I'm going gorilla. Yeah.
Dang. Even if you can pick your roster, you get to pick all the super freaks in the NFL and you get a couple guys from the MMA, you're still going gorilla.
There's just a relentlessness to a wild animal that can't be topped by the average human. And I get what you're talking about is not average humans, but at the end of the day, I'm going gorilla.
That's tough. Okay, that's tough for me because I've been team 100 men here in the office. And so our producer, Caden Smith, has been team gorilla. And so this is not helping my case. But, Will, sorry, go ahead.
No, I said, well, it is what it is.
Goes like that sometimes. But, Will, on the football side of things, I think a lot of college football fans are still getting introduced to what a general manager does in college football. If you were to sum up the kind of hats you wear during a given calendar year in college football, how would you best describe that?
It's funny. I don't know that this interview, we got enough time because I feel like every day I've got more hats that I walk in and get to choose from. What's cool about that is no day or hat that you would wear, right, per se, is the same. And so from my perspective, I'm trying as much as I can to manage these things on a general level as best as possible. In every scenario, we've got great people around our building. We've got great people from top to bottom that are constantly doing their best to make Auburn as great a program as it could possibly be. And we know the sky's the limit here, right, in terms of winning national titles and championships. And so when you manage all those things from a general perspective and fashion, you get to have your hands in a bunch of cookie jars. But we've got great people everywhere. I try and get in where I can fit in a lot of cases. But my day-to-day operation is to help manage this roster under Coach Freeze, right? Building the roster and utilizing the tools and the resources we have here at a place like Auburn to build this thing in a way that creates championship mindsets and goals and practices. And so, if I had to boil it all down, I would say day to day, it's managing this roster, not letting this roster manage us.
That's a great way to say it, not letting the roster manage you. And I'm sure you mentioned the tools with the landscape continuing to evolve. How does data analytics and platforms like Teamworks Intelligence help Auburn gain a competitive edge, so to speak, when it comes to not just player recruitment, but also player development?
Yeah, I love the idea of marrying art and science when it comes to the evaluation process, right? So call, science, the data, the analytics, the things that can be brought to the table that the average eye doesn't see. And then talk about art, right? Our training ground as scouts, as people who watch tape. I've been doing this now going on season 12. I mean, the reality of it is I've done a lot of things that would make me an expert, and I'm going to air quote that, but just you do things for 10,000 hours, at some point you're going to figure some things out. But how do you marry the two, right? How do you marry the art and science of data and analytics with the eye and what we're looking for specifically and what we know about an individual that maybe numbers don't bring into account? And so as you monitor and look through the football character and the personal character of kids, marry that with what you see on tape, and then add in a layer of data and analytics, you get a gumbo, if you will, to spit out basically what it is that you believe a player can be on your roster. And I think that's the way you marry it, and you do it as best you can to take all of the information in to give yourself the best opportunity to make a decision for your team and roster.
Can't go wrong. Little art science gumbo there. Never a
There you
bad
go.
thing. Never a
There you
bad
go. I
thing.
spent a little time in Louisiana.
Absolutely. You mentioned helping Coach Freeze. What are the touch points like for y'all? Is it primarily a scouting? Is it primarily a recruiting touch point? Talk me through what those conversations are like during a given week for Auburn.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would depend on the time of year, right? So there's sometimes a year where roster retention are the big touch points, right? And roster evaluation, making sure that we're allocating, call it what it is, allocating funds the correct ways to the current structure of your roster and doing it in a manner that honors and takes care of your best players, certainly. Then from that standpoint, what we're doing in recruiting, right? What are our evaluations? Where are they at? Where are we at in the recruitment process of a student athlete and his family? Getting them on campus. We've got official visit season here coming up in May and June. Really looking forward to that, and giving yourselves the opportunity to put your best foot forward, to roll out the orange carpet, if you will, for these folks and show them what Auburn's all about in that 48-hour window as best you can. And then also looking towards the portal, right? And so just that calendar breakdown is really the thing that separates, I think, us and our attack of that calendar, and everything that we try and do. They're chess moves we're trying to make, not checkers moves. And so as you go through a given week, depending on the week of the year that you're in and the calendar mode that you're in, and coaches going on the road and getting the head coach into schools and meeting with kids and families, I mean, those are important things. And so it really depends on the time of year. It depends on, as the calendar turns, what your focus is. But as long as you make that the most important piece while juggling all the other elements in the air, you're going to have a lot of success.
And on top of all that, like the personal element you mentioned when it comes to recruiting at the high school level, what were some of those conversations like with these recruits when you're trying to get them in the boat for Auburn, when you put together this top 10 class that y'all just signed?
Well, it started here at home for us, right? As you look at the On3 rankings and you look at the different pieces of it, we made a priority our state, right, and locking down our borders here in what we call like the state of Auburn, right, is what we wanted to do, is go out and do some unprecedented things. And Coach Freeze led that charge. It started with him. And even in the recruitment of myself here to be a part of this staff, we spoke very candidly about what it would mean to continue to win over this state. And that was something that Coach was not going to settle on. We were going to do everything within our power to make sure student athletes, families, and high school coaches in the state of Alabama knew that Auburn was here and Auburn was here to stay. And so making them a priority on a daily basis is kind of where we started there. And as we went through the year and as they saw our needs, we were open and candid about where they fit on this roster, their opportunity to see the field and what it looked like from a compensation standpoint. Once you married all those things together, what you got was a really talented class that we're really excited about going through the spring. We had the opportunity to see a lot of these guys in action. We only have a handful of guys that weren't here with us early. Then you couple that with the portal class. Coach Freeze has been able to sign 2 top 10 classes, a top 10 portal class as well. So getting the roster flipped and get it headed in the right direction was the charge by him to all of our staff members. And everybody has picked up the rope and pulled in the same direction, which has been really fun.
You mentioned that those early enrollees that got to campus and got to go through spring ball. We got to have Deuce Knight on our show when he was going into his senior year of high school. And one of the things that struck me was just the it factor that he carries himself with, the face, the franchise feel that he gives off. What were your impressions of him, and what were your impressions of him so far throughout spring practice wrapping up here in the last couple of weeks?
You spend any time with Deuce Knight and you realize very quickly that you're dealing with a highly capable and mature individual, right? In any scenario, in any room he walks in, he can meet with folks. He can hold conversations. He's confident. He's poised. I love the cerebral nature of that for him as a quarterback, and being able to handle when the picture shifts and changes, right, from the quarterback perspective. And I think what has been so neat is watching his growth and development under Ken Austin, right, and Jesse Stone here, and Coach Freeze, Coach Nix, our offensive staff. I mean, he has just taken to it like a sponge. And it's because he's willing to do the work, and he has the football character that we believed he had throughout the recruiting process. And he comes from a wonderful family, and just who he is as a person, people naturally are drawn to. And we are very fortunate to have him on this roster and in this locker room, because just by being himself, right, he elevates those around him. He makes you a better person just by being in the same room with him. And he's an awesome kid, man. I am so excited to see him on this team for years to come. It's really exciting.
I think a lot of people look at your quarterback room, you say, okay, great, you got Deuce Knight. But then on top of that, you also go get Jackson Arnold out of the portal, a former 5-star in his own right. What made him the right fit for y'all at Auburn?
I think you look at what Coach Freeze wants to do offensively, right? The RPO system, the ability to throw the deep ball, the ability to run, scramble, to create on the move. That's a vitally important thing in today's college football, right? And Jackson has an it factor to him as well that you can't deny. And when you spend time around him and you get to know him, it's fun and exciting to see those guys work together. I mean, it's cool because they're always walking in the building together. They're feeding off one another and competing and having a wonderful time together in building a brotherhood, a bond in that quarterback room that's really special. And so from Jackson's perspective, bringing him here, showing him how he would fit in this offense, right? Building the relationships, the character, the type of person he is. I mean, you don't become the National Gatorade Player of the Year for no reason. I mean, Jackson Arnold is an elite talent, and we think by providing him our ecosystem and allowing him to grow and thrive in it, he's going to have the opportunity to flourish in a big way.
And then, I mean, either one of those guys, they're throwing to a pretty stacked room of wide receivers from Cam Coleman.
Pretty strong room.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I think I was out there during spring ball a year ago watching Cam Coleman as an early enrollee, and I'm like, it's not a freshman. That's not a freshman wide receiver running around out there, and he does what he does as a true freshman this past year in college football. But now you add to that room, staying in the portal vein, Eric Singleton. What was the pitch for you guys to bring him to Auburn? Because one of the top guys in the portal, I'm sure he had a fair amount of people give him some phone calls and text messages. What made him ultimately end up with Auburn?
Yeah, I think ultimately it comes down to a familiarity, being from the Atlanta area, having relationships with guys like Kenyatta Watson here, make him a natural fit to join our locker room. He has an elite skill set, right? The speed, the hands, the ability to cut in and out of breaks, right? To find open grass, help quarterbacks out. I mean, Eric is just naturally gifted in so many ways. And what's so neat is above all that as a person, right? Again, I keep going back to the personal character that these kids have, and the amount of time we pour into that is intentional, right? But Eric is another kid that when he walks in the room, people naturally gravitate toward him. He's a big smile guy that his teammates love to be around. Coach Marcus Davis did a phenomenal job recruiting him with Coach Derek Nix as well as Coach Freeze to show him the vision and plan for him as well, not only as a receiver, but as a kick returner. And so, yes, while he was being pursued by several, top programs in the country, just like Auburn, I think ultimately his familiarity with this place from even his high school recruitment process and the familiarity with people in this building gave him comfort and his family comfort in choosing Auburn and selling the vision of what this thing's getting ready to become, which we're all really excited about.
Since Coach Freeze got to Auburn, it seems to be a theme of we're continuing to push the envelope with just stockpiling this roster with talent. How would you define where Auburn is right now as it pertains to that whole push to get Auburn to where they want to be from a talent perspective as the GM?
Yeah, I would say we're on track, right? We're trending in a positive direction, which is what Coach Freeze's charge to all of us has been is, hey, let's continue to make daily strides to getting this thing to what Auburn deserves to be. Right, which is a championship contender in some way, shape, or form. And so as we continue to push this roster towards that creates competition. And more competition allows all boats in the building to rise, right? And so whether you're a freshman coming in and you're the best player, you're going to have an opportunity to see the field, right? It does not matter age. It doesn't matter background. It doesn't matter years on campus. None of that. Portal guy, high school kid, inherited guy on the roster. It doesn't matter. The best players will play. And I think that level of understanding by our entire roster as set by Coach Freeze allows us the opportunity to create competition by recruiting student athletes to come in and seize that moment and kind of seize the day as it pertains to starting opportunities. And so, again, all boats rise with that competition, and we saw a lot of that this spring.
Will, last question for you, man. We appreciate all your time. Getting to be on campus last spring and watch y'all practice felt like a buzz was in the air. Like you felt like something's happening on the plains.
Absolutely.
What fires you up about where Auburn is right now and where you guys are going to be here in the next, season and next couple of seasons, quite frankly?
I think you're really seeing the culture Coach Freeze has brought to Auburn really take off. It starts in the locker room, and the idea is we're going to sign elite high school talent, right? We're going to grow and develop that talent. We're going to supplement in the portal as needed. But it's going to start with high school classes, right? And allow that vision and that culture to play out and permeate throughout the locker room, so that now as we go into, coach's third year here, in future years to come, right, that culture is living and breathing in an ecosystem where that's the standard by which we operate. And that starts at the head. It starts with coach and his ability to get these guys, singularly focused on a team first mentality, not worrying about all the noise out there surrounding college athletics right now, and just worrying about being a great teammate, being a great student, being a great son, in some cases being a great husband and father, whatever it may be. Those are the things that are most important in a Hugh Freeze program, and those ideals align with Auburn through thick and thin. And so as you bring people into the Auburn family, as cheesy as that sounds, right, and they experience that, it changes them for the better, and that culture then permeates itself onto the practice field and into Jordan Hare on Saturdays and into this conference, which is going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Well, I think people are seeing it. I think the entire college football world is starting to look over on the plains and say, what's going on up there at Auburn, Alabama? What's Will Redmond building over there with Hugh Freeze? But, man, we appreciate you making time, and I can't wait to watch y'all here get after it on Saturdays in Jordan Hare.
Thank you, JD. Appreciate you guys.